to know the session is being recorded. And I will start us off just with a quick welcome to our virtual conference. So today is our Innovative Leaders Virtual Conference with a spotlight on our Wyoming virtual leaders. And we have had an amazing day. This is our last session for the day, and we are so excited to have these leaders sharing with us. We have had the opportunity at the Friday Institute to partner with the Wyoming Department of Ed to work with these amazing innovators across the state of Wyoming as they work to foster positive change in their schools. So just a big shout out to WDE for supporting these great leaders in this process. As the host, the Friday Institute today, Nancy and I are joining you as the host of the conference, but most of our time will be spent with a spotlight on our presenters. And so we have Steve here to present Student-Led Conference, and Steve has a guest star with him. So I am going to turn it over to Steve and Tanya. And Steve, it is all yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Nancy and Teresa for all their help. It was a great session that we did. All our sessions were great, and all the presentations so far today have been great. Hopefully I can kind of live up to what everybody else has shared. So thank you for all your help. This presentation that we're doing today is on student-led conferences. Here at our school, we talked about doing some different things and trying some different things to help increase our participation with parents and get more parents to come and increase our student participation as well. So we have done some research and started to look at different things that we might implement. And this is one of the things that we decided that we might try. Our introductions, again, I'm Steve Priest. I'm the principal here at Hannah Elk Mountain Medicine Bow Junior Senior High School. I'm a former ag ed teacher and a former science teacher. I'll let Tanya introduce herself.
Okay, I'm Tanya Ward. I'm the ELA teacher here at HEM. I teach 7th through 12th grade.
And she has been a rock star in our implementation of our student-led conferences, and especially implementing some digital tools for our student-led conferences. We'll get into that a little bit further, and some of the different aspects of student-led conferences and what they are. First of all, some of the research on student-led conferences. Donald Hackman is an assistant professor at the University, was at the University of Illinois, now at Iowa State, and he's done a lot of research on student-led conferences. And it shows that parents, teachers, and students engage in more open and honest dialogue. The students accept a personal responsibility for their academic performance, and that parents tend to attend conferences at an increased rate. And this is something that was really intriguing to us, because we sometimes struggle with parents wanting to come to conferences. And I think that's across the board as parents and students their students get older and they come into higher grades, that the participation rates drop off. So we wanted to try to increase those conference participation rates. The students learn the process of self-evaluation. They develop an organizational and oral communication skills. That's something that we need to develop in our students for 21st century learning, and for them to be successful as they leave us. And teachers reported a reduced conference preparation workload. Again, that's all from Hackman's research over the years. This quote was pretty substantial as we researched trying to implement the student-led conference, that this practice is probably the biggest breakthrough in communicating about student achievement in the last century. When students are well prepared over an extended period to tell the story of their own success or the lack thereof, they seem to experience a fundamental shift in their internal sense of responsibility for that success. The pride in accomplishment that students feel when they have a positive story to tell and tell it well can be immensely motivational. A sense of personal responsibility that they feel when anticipating what it'll be like to face the music of having to tell their story of poor achievement can also drive them to productive work. So basically, the students take responsibility of having to tell whether they did a good job or whether they didn't do a good job, and having to actually tell their parents that themselves really motivates those students a lot. What are student-led conferences? It's basically where the students take the lead in telling the parents what happened. They facilitate the conference with the parents. They demonstrate to the parents what has been learned throughout the time period, whether it's a quarter, a semester, or whatever you set that time period up. They have samples of work from their class, and they can explain their parents, whether it's good or bad. And they reflect on those samples of work. They collect those samples of work in a notebook, whether it's digital or traditional notebook, and they prepare those samples with those reflections of why they've chose those samples. And the teachers can help choose those samples. And the teachers assist the students in preparation for those conferences. And they're available during the conference time to help the students along. Some students are going to need more assistance than others, and some students are going to need less assistance. Students set goals. We've heard in the previous sessions that goal setting is a big part of the student learning, and the students set goals for their learning, and this is a big part of the student-led conferences. And the students can gain parental support for reaching those goals. There are some big differences between traditional conferences and student-led conferences. A traditional conference is teacher-driven, where a student-led conference is student-driven. A traditional conference has a short time frame with little time for conversations, where a student-led conference is longer and is conversation-based. Your traditional conference is a lot of times in an arena style or a large group setting, where these are not necessarily in that type of setting. Your student-led conferences have high accountability for your students. Your traditional conference focuses tend to be on social and emotional rather than academic many times, and these are very academic. You can have some social and emotional goals, but they're very academic, and there's opportunities for goal setting. And you have your samples of your work as well, and the student-led is true, authentic assessment with that student-led conference. Why would we have a shift to student-led conferences? We wanted to have more student-parent interaction. We wanted to have more parental involvement. That was a big driving force for us, and hopefully have better participation rates. We wanted students to have the opportunity to show their work. Even in, say, our ag class where they're building something, they could show how their progress is coming along and what they're doing in their ag class. They could take their parents out to the shop and show them what they're doing. There's high accountability with these student-led conferences. There's an opportunity for goal setting and authentic assessment. One thing that they can do is if a parent can't come in, they can still have their conference at home with their parents if they can't attend. The responsibility of the conference still lies with the students. And the students have to share their learning with their parents. So these are really, we're teaching these students these skills where they practice real life communication skills, self-evaluation, and self-reflection as well. What did we have to do in order to make this shift? We had to have staff buy-in. We studied a lot of research. If this doesn't go, let me know if you can't see this. We looked at a lot of different research. Looked at
Sorry,
what's that?
we can't see your screen.
Okay, let me Sometimes those links work, sometimes they don't. Okay.
I think if you maybe just want to hit share screen.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Okay. Now can
There
you
you
see
go.
it?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
So we had a lot of different research that we looked at. These are just some of the links, and it's linked in that slideshow if you want to see those, or if you need those, you can feel free to get in contact with me and I can share these. But there's a lot of research that's out there on student-led conferences, how to implement student-led conferences. So we really looked at that. Are we back to the, can you still see the presentation now? Okay, can you still see it?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So in order to make this shift, with the staff bought in and they decided that this is the way we wanted to go. So we had to decide how we're going to do this and change what we were going to do. We needed to collect student work samples over time. How are we going to collect that work? Were we going to have portfolios? Were we going to have traditional notebooks or portfolios? Were we going to do digital portfolios? Who was going to keep track of that work? And so we had to have a way to collect those work samples. Students had to do reflections for that work. For example, if it's something that they're proud of, they had to say that I'm proud of this because. What did I learn from this, or what did I enjoy about this work? If it's something that they may not have done so well on, I could have done better on this because. This was difficult for me because. Maybe it's something that they just didn't turn in at all. It's a missing piece of work. I was given an opportunity to do this, but I did not because. So we had to prepare the students with this. We had to do some teacher prep with this as well. We had to prepare the teachers on how to do this. The teachers needed to know exactly what to do. We had to prepare the students on how to do this. Who would select the work? Would it be the students? Would it be the teachers? Sometimes the teachers needed to help prompt the students on what they needed to select. Sometimes the students automatically knew what they wanted to select. Sometimes it was a combination of both. The student prep, they needed to help know how to write those reflections. They needed to maybe write parent letters to invite them. They needed to do a script. They needed help with goal setting, and they needed to practice the conferences as well. And that was probably the biggest piece, is to practice those conferences. Our goals here, they were set as a staff, and what we wanted to do. We wanted to increase parental involvement. Participation was our number one goal. We also wanted to encourage personal responsibility for performance with our students. Develop those student communication skills. Wanted to teach self-evaluation skills and process, and encourage student and parent-teacher dialogue. Those are our goals, and we revisit those goals and are continuing to revisit those goals as we move along. Some of the strategies that we've utilized, and I'll have Tanya talk about these a little bit. We did get parental permission to share these because the parents are here giving the presentation for these student e-portfolios. Tanya kind of took the lead on setting these up in her class, and then the students can put work on there for basically all of their classes. So here is one of the samples, and I can walk through this, and Tanya can explain how they set these up.
Okay, so I started with Google Sites. I created my own template where I set up just classes first hour through 7th hour, and then I had each kid open up the template, and then they could make it their own, put their name, they put a little bio on the home page. They could change the themes, different colors and things, and then I had them go in to for my class and add in certain things. This one is, I think, science maybe. I'm not sure. This one's not my class. Fifth hour would be mine.
Yeah.
And so I have folders set up for them to put their work in for each quarter. I give them kind of a must-have list that they need to put into their portfolio for each quarter. So some of the bigger projects we did. And then I give them a list of other things that we've done that they can choose if they want to add extra things into theirs. And each quarter I have them complete a portfolio, reflection questions that they put in there. So questions like, which piece was my best, which I'm most proud of, what I could have improved upon. And each one of those reflections, I also have them set goals and then look back at the previous reflection and to, look at if they've met their goals they set for the last time.
Here's another sample of that, and this is actually my daughter's. So you can see that her introduction, she's in the 7th grade. She plays volleyball, basketball, and does track in FFA. She has a rabbit if she wants a dog or an alpaca. Wants to work in technology when she's older, and wants to go to college at UW or at Ohio State. 7th hour is her her English class, and you can see an example of her reflections like we saw races. And this is an example of how they can do their reflections on different assignments and also set those goals. She has her short-term goals, long-term goals, and a way to do this. One part that I really like about this is they can use this for all of their different classes. For 6th hour, they can also put things in there. They have successful moments, challenges, and goals. For all their classes, they can do that. Some of their classes, they chose to do it for. Some of their classes, they didn't. For example, like their PE classes and stuff, they really didn't do that for as much. So this has turned into something we're trying to train the teachers more on these digital portfolios as well. Some other things that we can use and have started to use a little bit, and some of our teachers have used. Schoology is our learning management system. Some of the teachers have used some aspects of that for our student-led conferences and contacting parents and so forth. Seesaw is a kind of a digital portfolio sample as well. We really liked using the Google site because we're a Google Tools district, and that seemed to work really well. Flipgrid is another tool that you can use for a lot of different things, and that I've seen some teachers use that as well. Some of the reflections, it's still a work in progress. We're still evaluating our goals and our tools and things that we're doing. Some things that we need to do is some more teacher training and preparation, especially with the digital tools, the digital portfolio, and so forth. More student training in how to maybe use those digital tools, how to add things, how to write some better reflections and so forth for all of their classes, not just in language arts. Perhaps a parent training. We didn't get the parent boost that we thought we would, but that's still a work in progress. I think some of the parents didn't necessarily know what to expect with a student-led conference. So, I think with the parent training and making sure that parents know what to expect as well. That's kind of all I had. Are there any questions?
So Steve and Tanya, thank you so much. And I apologize, at that very beginning, we didn't realize we were supposed to be seeing your slide deck, so we didn't have the first couple of slides recorded.
Okay.
But if you share that deck with me, I'm happy to put it like view only on
I
there.
will record it.
Great, thank you so much. Good. So I love actually that you're thinking about that parent engagement and possibly parent education to go along with it. I do remember you talking to us about that goal of getting more parents integrally involved. So I would love to hear if you go forward with that, if it changes your numbers, because I think that's parent education is something I think is a great challenge for all schools to figure out how to do.
And I love that you have incorporated, I mean, I think you've definitely, it seems like, embedded a little bit of teacher choice in this, or teacher options, you know, with people having like some core elements being the same across all the portfolios, but then allowing teachers to maybe have some buy-in and some ownership over how they set it up, or with, but I think those written reflections are a really nice piece. I hadn't seen that in portfolios before, and so I really liked that written reflection where students were kind of going in and kind of having, like, helping them be a little bit more mindful about their own habits and kind of reflecting on their strengths and weaknesses and maybe where they want to grow. So I think that's great. Or opportunity. It's not a weakness, it's an opportunity for growth, right?
So we do have a question in the chat. It is from Steve Miller. He says, how do you schedule for the times, and do students invite their parents?
We don't schedule specific times. We invite the parents, and we have the students invite the parents. We haven't written specific invitations with students yet. That's something that I think we're going to try next year, is have the students write specific invitations to the parents and see if that helps with participation rates as well.
Yeah. So I have a question for either one of you all, Steve, for you, or Tanya, that did you notice any change in your, or did you get any reactions from your students as they've done this this year, or whenever you started implementing the portfolios? Have the students, do they make any comments, or have you seen any kind of changes with them as far as the ownership of their work?
I'll let you answer that first.
I would say maybe a little bit. I've heard comments about how, you know, especially with the reflections, like, oh, I really didn't do a very good job on that, where the kids are kind of taking ownership even on kind of things that they know they didn't do very well on, like, rather than saying, well, you gave me an F on that. Well, oh, I really didn't spend much time on that. That's probably what I earned. So that's kind of the shift that I've seen, where they're holding themselves a little more accountable.
I think the reflection piece has really helped with that. That's helped a lot.
That's great. Really helping that partnership between you all and the students, the teachers.
There's another question in the chat, and so either one of you can answer this. I think it'd be interesting to get both your perspectives on this.
Yes.
This one says, I love the idea.
I think from my perspective, I think looking at the research first helped.
Oh, okay.
Instead of me coming out and saying, this is what we're going to do, I said, I think I would like to try this. What are your thoughts? Here's some research. Here's some things. Explore this. Let's look at this as a potential to try. And then shared the research, had everybody look at it, and then come back at another staff meeting and say, okay, what are your thoughts? Is this something we want to go to? Is this something we want to try? It helps that our elementary is doing it.
Oh, yeah.
So that helped a lot. You know, instead of me just coming out and saying, we're going to this, no questions, this is what we're doing. I shared the research. I said, here's a lot of information. Read. There's more out there other than what I've shared. And then now let's discuss it.
So Tanya, do you have anything to add from the teacher perspective? How was it received?
A lot of what Steve said, where he didn't just force this on it. He sent out the research. You guys go look at this, decide what you think, and then we came together and agreed on it. And also, as far as like as a parent, my son was doing these in elementary school. I've seen them. I think they go a lot better from the parent perspective as well.
That's great. That's really good.
And I don't know if y'all can see the chat, but Pete's giving y'all yeah, Pete's eyes. Yeah. So a lot to be learned all the way around from everyone. So yeah, it's lots of good information.
Yeah, so if you had one piece of advice for people who are thinking about doing this, what would it be?
I would say just continue to learn from it, because like I said, ours is continuing to evolve. It's not the magic bullet to increase participation or anything, which we were hoping, but it is not that magic bullet, but it does help with like the student ownership and stuff so far, and we'll continue to evaluate it and evolve and go from there.
Yeah.
So Tanya, do you have any advice you'd give to a teacher?
I think, I hear from kids a lot, like, why do we have to do this portfolio? My parents never come to conferences. And my response is always that it's about you showing your work and you reflecting on your work. And even if we weren't going to do student-led conferences, I was going to have this plan anyway. So it's really just about being accountable for your work.
That's great. What a great response. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
that's wonderful.
Well, thank y'all so much for sharing. This has been really helpful, and we'll make sure that the research that Steve shared is that you all have access to those links and all of that information, because that's great research. And maybe Pete, it'll help you next time too.
Yeah, then you'll be armed with the research in your hand.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been an amazing day of learning. As we've said throughout the day, we will make all of these recordings available via the website, and we will send a follow-up note for those of you who did register. So we appreciate you joining us, and thank you all so much for sharing your learning with all of us.
Thank you.
Everybody, we really appreciate it.
Goodbye. Have a wonderful day.
You too.